非常高兴，我们要开始学习幸福心理学这门课啊。这门课呢也叫积极心理学，它的英文名字不是 Happiness Psychology， 而是 Positive Psychology。为什么是 Positive Psychology 呢？下面请大家先拿出一张纸，写下你对幸福的理解是什么，也就是说，你认为的幸福是什么？好，现在大家写完了吧？请把你对幸福的理解收好。当我们课程结束的时候，把它拿出来，再做一个课程的总结，看看经过1学期的学习，你对幸福的理解是什么，有了什么样的变化啊？幸福的理解是什么？下面呢为什么叫做 positive psychology？ 那么这个 positive psychology 它的来源是哪里呢？我们来看一段录像。这段录像呢是泰勒本沙哈尔博士在哈佛进行幸福心理学授课时候最开始所讲的一段话。在这段话里面，他解释了为什么要有幸福心理学，或者叫为什么要有积极心理学。在这段话里面，这个哈佛幸福课，如果大家在网易上去搜的话，你们会直接搜到泰勒本沙哈尔所讲的哈佛大学的幸福课。而在哈佛大学幸福课，它的英文名称就是 Positive Psychology， 就是我们要着重讲述的内容。下面我们先看一段授課的片段。
Hi, good morning. It's wonderful to be back here. Wonderful to see you here. I'm teaching this class because I wish a class like this had been taught when I was sitting in your seats as an undergrad here. This does not mean that it's a class you wish to be taught, nor does it mean that it's the right class for you. What I hope to do in the next couple of lectures is give you an idea of what this class is about so that you can decide whether or not it is for you. I came here in 1992 and started off as a computer science concentrator, and then had a mini epiphany halfway through my sophomore year. I realized that I was in a wonderful place with wonderful students around me, wonderful teachers. I was doing well academically. I was doing well in athletics. I was playing varsity squash at the time. I was doing well socially. Everything was going well, except for the fact that I was unhappy. And I didn't understand why. And it was then, in a matter of moments, that I decided that I had to find out why and become happier. And that's when I switched my concentration from computer science to philosophy and psychology, with a single question: how can I become happier? Over time, I did become happier. What had contributed most to my happiness was when I encountered a new emerging field. At that time didn't have the name that it has today, but essentially research that falls under or within the field of positive psychology. Positive psychology, studying it, applying the ideas to my life has made me significantly happier. It continues to make me happier. And it was when I realized the impact that it had on me that I decided to share it with others. That's when I decided that I wanted to be a teacher and teach this field. So this is Positive Psychology, Psychology 1504. And we'll be exploring this new, relatively new and fascinating field. And hopefully, we will be exploring more than the field, ourselves. When I first taught this class, it was back in 2002. I taught it as a seminar and had 8 students. 2 dropped out. That left me with 6. The year after, the class became slightly larger. I had over 300 students. And then the third year when I taught it, which was the last time, I had 850 students in the class, making it at that point the largest course at Harvard. And that's when the media became interested, because they wanted to understand why. They wanted to understand this phenomenon that here you have a class that's larger than Introduction to Economics. How could that be? So I was invited by the media for interviews, whether it was newspapers, radio, television. And I started to notice a pattern during those interviews. So I would walk into the interview, we'd have the interview, and afterwards the producer or the interviewer would walk me out and say something to the effect of, well, thank you, Tal, for the interview, but you know, I expected you to be different. And I would ask as nonchalantly as I could, of course, as if I didn't really care, but had to ask anyway, how different? And they would say, well, you know, we expected you to be more outgoing. Next interview, at the end of the interview, same thing. Thank you for doing the interview, but, you know, Tal, I expected you to be different. And once again, nonchalantly, of course, I would ask, so how different? And he or she would say, well, you know, we expected you to be less introverted. Next interview, same thing. How different? Well, you know, more extroverted, more outgoing. Next interview, well, you know, less shy. Because, you know, I get very nervous in interviews. Interview after interview, literally dozens. More outgoing, more cheerful, less introverted, more extroverted, and on and on. But here is the best one. So this is one of the local channels here in around Boston. I go into the interview. We have quite a long interview, which I thought was actually pretty good. And at the end of the interview, the interviewer, who's a very jolly guy, walks me out, puts his hand on my shoulder, and says, Tal, thank you very much for doing the interview. And then the usual comes. But you know, Tal, I expected you to be different. And I said, how different? And now, just so that you understand, by this time, my self-esteem is shot. But still, with some semblance of nonchalance, I ask, how different? And he looks at me and says, well, I don't know, Tal, I expected you to be taller. Taller? What, 5'7", or okay, 5'6.5" is not enough to teach happiness? And I thought about it, and I thought about it a lot, the whole pattern from the beginning. And I think I understand why they expected someone different. You see, they had to explain to themselves, as well as the audience, how come this class is larger than Introduction to Economics? And the way to explain it must be that the teacher is very outgoing, extremely charismatic, very cheerful, an extrovert, and of course, tall. Well, there was one L missing there, but yeah, if only. So the problem, though, is that they were looking in the wrong place for the explanation. In other words, they were looking at the messenger. Where they needed to look at was at the message. Now, how do I know that? You see, because I see other positive psychology classes on other campuses around the country and around the world. There are over 200 campuses here in the United States that teach positive psychology. On almost every campus where this class is taught, it's either one of the or the largest class. It's about the message. I see more and more organizations taking up positive psychology in their, as consultant companies. Some of the big consulting companies are taking it on. More and more high schools are introducing positive psychology classes. Elementary schools are introducing it. Governments around the world are expressing an interest in this new and emerging field. Why? Because it works. Because it really works. You see, this whole realm of life flourishing, of happiness, of well-being, has been, until recently, dominated by the self-help movement. What do we have in the self-help movement? We have books that are very interesting, that are very accessible. We have speakers who are very outgoing, very charismatic and tall, attracting in the masses into these workshops and seminars and lectures. But, and there is a very big but here, many of these books, many of these workshops and seminars lack substance. Very often over-promising and under-delivering. So these are the 5 things you need to know to be happy. The 3 things to be the great leader. The 1 secret of success, happiness, and the perfect love life. Over-promising, under-delivering. On the other hand, we have academia. What do we have in academia? We have a lot of rigor, a lot of substance. We have data that's analyzed, reanalyzed, and meta-analyzed. Things that actually work. Good stuff. But, and there is also a very big but here, very few people refereed academic journals. I mean, think about it. How many people outside of this room, of course, have read the last 12 issues of the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology? Well, most people don't even know what that means. The head of my PhD program actually estimated that the average academic journal article is read by 7 people. You know, and that includes the author's mother. So, you know, and I say it half in jest, but it's actually really sad, because, certainly sad for me as an academic, because these things are good, they're important, things that make a difference, can make even more of a difference, but not accessible to most people. And this is where positive psychology comes in. And this is also where this class comes in. The explicit mandate of positive psychology, as well as of this class, is to create a bridge between the ivory tower and Main Street. In other words, it is to bring the rigor, the substance, the empirical foundation, the science from academia, and merge it with the accessibility of the self-help or New Age movement. In a way, the best of both worlds. And this explains the popularity of the field of positive psychology. Science that works.
好，现在我们的录像看完了，